The need for recognition has been part of human life for as long as people have lived together. Long before modern society, before platforms or metrics, individuals were already attentive to how they were seen by others. Recognition functioned quietly, as a signal of belonging and place. For most of human history, to be recognized was to be counted. It meant being included, remembered, and relied upon. To be ignored carried consequences. It often meant having less influence, fewer alliances, and less protection when circumstances shifted. Being seen wasn't vanity. It was information about one's standing in the group. Over time, this sensitivity became deeply embedded. Recognition came to indicate not only approval, but safety and coherence within a social world. Psychologically, recognition works as external feedback for an internal question. Am I doing okay? When inner standards are steady, recognition reassures without dominating. When those standards weaken, recognition grows heavier. It stops being something received and starts being something awaited. The pattern begins early. A child learns to ride a bike and calls out, "Watch me, Mom," because the act doesn't feel as important unless someone is watching. Later, the setting changes, but the structure remains. A video is judged by its views, a book by its sales. Recognition continues to signal whether one is, in some essential sense, doing well. A post goes up, a photo is shared, an opinion is put out there. Then you check back. Any views, reactions, or nothing? What's being checked isn't just the response. It's where you stand. Being seen starts to answer whether you're doing well, fitting in, or quietly falling behind. In that situation, silence doesn't just pass by. It starts to mean something. Even a lot of money or public attention doesn't remove this. Recognition still works as a sign that things are, in some basic way, going well. The shape of it changes, but what it's used for stays the same. At a certain point, something subtle shifts. The desire for recognition itself isn't the issue. What changes is how recognition is measured. External signals, numbers, reactions, visibility, begin to stand in for internal judgment. Instead of recognition responding to value, value starts being inferred from recognition. Psychology describes this as a replacement of internal appraisal with external cues. When feedback is frequent, quantified, and socially amplified, it becomes easier to trust the signal than one's own assessment. Silence, then, isn't neutral anymore. It starts to feel like absence of worth, even when effort and meaning remain intact. Stoic thinkers noticed a similar distortion. They observed how reputation and praise, though outside one's control, gradually come to govern self-evaluation. Buddhism described the same tendency through attachment to self-image, the discomfort that arises when identity depends too heavily on being reflected back by others. From a psychological point of view, the difficulty isn't wanting recognition. That impulse is human and persistent. The difficulty lies in losing proportion. When external confirmation quietly overrides inner certainty, and when visibility becomes mistaken for value. Nothing dramatic announces this shift. It unfolds slowly. Recognition moves from reassurance to requirement. External signals begin doing work they were never meant to do. Over time, this changes how effort itself is experienced. Actions no longer stand on their own. They wait, quietly, for a response. Until that response arrives, they remain suspended, unfinished in some subtle way. The absence of recognition doesn't simply go unnoticed. It introduces uncertainty about whether the effort counted at all. This helps explain why recognition rarely satisfies for long. Because it addresses uncertainty rather than resolving it, it has to be renewed. Each signal reassures briefly, then fades. What remains isn't contentment, but vigilance. A quiet monitoring of response, reaction, and absence. Modern media environments intensify this pattern without necessarily creating it. They don't invent the need for recognition, but they change its scale, speed, and visibility. Recognition becomes more frequent, more legible, and more comparable. Signals that were once occasional now arrive continuously, often quantified and publicly displayed. Media systems encourage this quietly. Views, likes, shares, and reactions compress complex responses into simple indicators. They reduce ambiguity. In doing so, they offer a shortcut for judgment. Instead of asking whether something resonates, endures, or matters over time, attention becomes the immediate stand-in. This subtly reshapes perception. Effort, accompanied by visible recognition, feels complete. Effort without it feels provisional. Silence invites interpretation. Was it overlooked? Was it unimpressive? Or did it simply disappear into the stream? Over time, attention shifts outward. Instead of checking in with ourselves, we start looking outside to see how we're doing. Feedback comes from things that change all the time and aren't evenly shared. Recognition stops being about interest or effort alone. It starts depending on timing, on who sees it, on how systems work, and on luck. Even so, it still feels personal. What makes this convincing is that the signals look solid. Numbers seem clear. Counts feel fair. But they don't really explain much. They stand in for meaning instead of measuring it. They tell you something happened without telling you why. Because of that, recognition is easier to follow, but harder to rely on. A response feels good for a moment, then leaves you wondering what it means. Silence stays with you longer than attention does. Checking becomes a habit because it feels like the only way to know where you stand. Thus, the tension remains, between effort and being noticed, between what you feel inside and what comes back from the outside, quietly shaping how things are understood, without ever clearly becoming a problem that needs fixing.